Live from Toronto, it's Hebsy On Sports, episode number 276. Hi there, sports fans. Mark Hebsher here in the Little Italy studio. Toronto Mike taking some time off. Who am I kidding? We're both taking time off. That's the beauty of a podcast. We can record it and then do what we want, and you can listen to it whenever. Glad you're listening. Got a compilation of clips for you today from the past year or so. Not exactly the best of, not the worst of, certainly, and we're not going back all the way, 276 episodes back, because frankly, a lot of the stuff that happened, 3-4 years ago isn't as relevant today. Maybe something from a year ago might jog your memory, especially when it comes to the world of sports media. And that's what we're going to talk about today. A lot went on in front of the camera, behind the camera, behind the microphones, and a good many talented people that we became accustomed to watching, to listening to reading, have vanished from the airwaves. And some have taken up positions in other platforms, some in traditional media, and some have tried to, come up with podcasts, social media, things, that's the way it is in the business. So last year, Sean Fitzgerald, the fine writer from The Athletic, wrote an extensive article about sportscasters and the disappearance of highlight shows. And I went, wait a minute, highlight shows? I know a little something about sports highlight shows, naturally. Upon reading the article, I had a few comments of my own. And I expressed those on January 29th, 2021. Here's the clip. So this article by Fitzgerald was basically within, they quoted Jennifer Hedger as well, that when she started in 2002, it was about, let's look at the highlights. But now it's like if you don't show the San Jose, Arizona highlights, nobody cares.
Right.
Nobody cares. But they do want to hear people's opinions. They want to see more panel stuff, which I'm not sure. But personality, I agree that, I want to tune in for personality. And I get it. When I was on and with Jim, that was a personality-driven show. You knew what show you were watching.
Well, Jay and Dan is a modern-day example of like they
Tim and Sid as well.
Sure.
The difference being is that on the highlight shows, when they're actually doing highlight shows, and remember, Sportsnet 360 used to just run a loop of highlights, just nothing but highlights. Headline Sports. Before that, the score was basically a loop of highlights, which people love to have it in the background. Oh, I missed the Leaf highlights. Don't worry, it'll be back in 5 minutes. Right? It's part of a loop.
Right. But the big change, Hebsy, to me anyways, in this household anyways, I can only speak for this household, is that if you're interested in the Leafs Oilers highlights, like YouTube has the succinct and crisp 5-minute everything you needed to know and see from the game on demand. And literally, like my son, my youngest, who has to go to bed before these games sometimes even start. That's basically, he watches the 5-minute version. Oh, look, your 88 Nylander scored, and he watches that. Like, he gets everything from that. So that to me is the big game changer in the highlight universe.
Without a doubt, my son's been doing that for years, over a decade. He'd wake up every morning and he would, he subscribed to the NBA. This one guy, I guess, would cull all the highlights, and he, like you say, into a 5 or 7 minute package.
Right.
And my son would watch it every morning, the way other people would, non-cord cutters would watch the score or, the TSN's morning loop or whatever it was.
So if you're Faisal Kamisa, who is he's still very young and he has a bright future ahead of him, but his future, he can't be, his career peak can't be highlight guy, right? Like, I always wonder, is this a stepping stone to what Faisal Kamisa will be? Is it going to be a personality-driven show, sort of like the way, when Donovan Bennett appears on a show, it's his very strong personality and opinions that drive the content. Like, what I'm always wondering, like with a Laura Dykin or name it, randomly name somebody. Like, is this the peak that we're going to be doing these highlights in 2021?
Yeah. I guess you have to reinvent yourself, or you have to go with the flow. It's different than when I started. Obviously, I started as a reporter. I had broadcast experience in radio, but as a reporter, you have to learn to put a story together with visuals.
Right.
First in radio, you have to have what's called actualities, which is the interview you did or the wild sound that you picked up on your tape recorder, which, the listener is, oh, what's going on there?
Right.
Putting them in the mood, but visually, obviously, it's a whole other story. very different. And people are like, we've got screens. We're used to looking at screens. Oh, look at that. There's your highlight. Oh, look at that. And so to be able to pick that up on your device, as you know, it takes away any reason to sit down in front of the big screen and at a particular time, unless it's for a live event, and watch a highlight show.
Well, that's the only time I see a highlight show now is when I'm watching a live event and I haven't turned the channel yet, and then they start the highlight show.
As soon as the game is over.
Right.
And listen, for years, this has been a big beef. We just watched the Leaf game on TSN. As soon as the game is over, right, we're going to go back to the desk. This is so formulaic now.
Right.
We're going to go back to the desk.
Right.
The anchors are going to chit-chat. Oh, that was some game last night. Going to fill a little bit of time. And then when they're ready back at the game, at the site, they say, all right, let's go back to Buck Martinez and Dennis Showman. Let's go back to Gord Miller and Ray Ferraro. Let's hear what the coach had to say. Let's dial up the press conference.
Right.
All of that stuff. It's just very formulaic.
Right.
And there's nothing you can do about it. If I tell you that not that many years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, I guess it is a long time ago, I'd sit on the Maple Leafs team charter next to Doug Gilmour. We would, talk about everything, your families, football, baseball,
right,
sometimes not hockey at all. And then eventually it was, no, you can't sit there. The players sit there, and your media, you sit there, but still in the same plane and on the bus.
Right.
Media's over here, players are back there. But on commercial flights, everybody would just sit amongst each other. Right? I mean, I'd be sitting next to Ty Domi, and they'd all want to play cards. And Domi would say, you got to move. And I said, I'm not moving. So you got to move. We're playing cards. 4 of us are playing cards here. You play it on the armrests of the 4 aisle seats.
What are they playing there? Were they playing euchre? What were they playing?
Yeah. They play euchre.
That's
poker.
Okay.
They play gin.
Yes.
Cribbage sometimes, all kinds of stuff like that. So it's vastly different. Now you can't get anywhere near, and I mean physically now, especially during COVID, you can't get anywhere near a player. I mean, I remember we would go out, all the reporters, Mitch's area, Bill Bird, Don Martin, myself, Taddy, Andrea Carmen, Jerry Dobson before that, Rob Leth. You would go out, you'd make arrangements to interview a player or a couple of players. You'd meet them after practice, and you'd go to a coffee shop where they'd get in their street clothes, and you'd walk down the street, and your camera person would shoot them, and you'd do an interview, and you'd come back and put a story together.
Right.
Good story. Didn't know that about Gary Lehman, right? Didn't know that these guys lived together or these guys played minor hockey together. Don't have that anymore. Not as much anyway. Meanwhile, a few weeks later, the shit really hit the fan in the sports media world. You might recall 2 of the great TV sports duos, Tim and Sid and Jay and Dan, were broken up. One sort of voluntarily and the other not so voluntarily. Sid Sixero got an offer to co-host a morning TV non-sports coffee chinwag show, variety show kind of a thing, and accepted that. And then started a farewell tour on Tim and Sid, where I believe they were in every arena in the country. I'm just kidding. But anyway, it lasted a while, but basically Sid had made mention of the fact that he was leaving. And then a few months later, he actually did leave, and the show became called Tim and Friends. And Bell Media, in one fell swoop, in one day, fired sportscasters Brett Wallace in Ottawa, Natasha Staniszewski in Toronto, and incredibly, Dan O'Toole, who had been Jay Onright's partner for nearly 2 decades on both TSN and Fox Sports 1 in Los Angeles. So that was a bit of a shocker, and then a lot of stuff went on social media. A lot of stuff was going on. With Bell, Let's Talk, and the fact that, within a couple of days of that campaign, them firing, some pretty high-profile people. A lot of people were very upset about that, and justifiably so. And the morning after it happened, Mike and I talked about how some of these people were treated and what their reactions were. This from February 12th, 2021. Here's the clip. And you're wondering, too, when the word came down that Dan was gone and producer Tim was gone and Brandon, their head writer, was gone, and that Jay was staying. Mm-hmm. How did that turn out? What must have that been like All right, man, you soldier on for the rest of us. Carry the torch. But in the meantime, I can't let this go the way I was treated. I have to say something on social media. That's my thing. And even people were going, Dan, don't do it. Don't do it. And he's like, no, man, I have to do it. Because I think it's therapeutic. I think if you keep that in, your anger at the way you were treated, not so much that you're fired. It happens. But the way you were treated, like thrown out like yesterday's trash, like you're a number. I'm sorry, what's your account number, sir, with Bell?
Okay. Now, Dan has a reputation for going off on social media, maybe without giving it a sober second thought, as they say. Did he delete those? I saw the string of tweets, very about going off on, Bell Media for the Let's Talk hypocrisy. But I wonder, I haven't checked lately. I wonder if he at some point deleted those, but I haven't checked. So.
I don't know, but I know this. He's unbridled now, and that's good. You need to be able to say what's on your mind. And like I say, it's therapeutic to say, all these years after, the way I was treated, that's got to hurt. And it's going to take a while to rectify that in your own mind. You don't just, next week, okay, I'll get another job. Yep, that happened. That was a lot of time spent in your life. And it never ends well. But geez, not like that.
Right. Right.
One of the listeners on.
Oh, I'm so sorry, but this came up in a chat on your Facebook page last week, I believe. But that, one of the reasons they fire, Dan and not Jay, or not both together, they don't dump them both out, is because that duo that they spent millions promoting over the last several years is now broken up. They cannot do anything together. As so long as Jay wants to keep making his Bell Media paycheck, there cannot be a Jay and Dan in any form anywhere at this time.
I think we should do some research as to what happens when duos break up. Mm-hmm. What happens to the surviving members? Does one go on to, duos? Simon and Garfunkel broke up. Paul Simon went on to great things.
Yeah.
Right? Do we have an example of that in sports media, for example? Jim and I broke up. We were together 11 years. Mm-hmm. And Jim soldiered on, him and Gene Principe, for a number of years, and then Don Martin. But anyway, I think we can both agree that it wasn't the same as the magic that we had together.
And two examples off the top of my head real quick is that basically Jesse and Gene had successful careers in other ways, but really even now today they're trying to be Jesse and Gene again, because that's sort of
Humble and Fred.
Humble and Fred's a great example. They they really did realize that they were better together and had more success as a duo.
Yes. That's right. The sum is greater than the parts.
So at some point, when Jay's finished with his Bell Media career, that could be the rebirth of the Jay and Dan, whatever it is.
Think about this: Tim and Sid, Jay and Dan. How many sports duos, TV duos, let's say, spent more than 10 years together?
Right.
I mean, you've got Jennifer Hedger and Darren Detition. But even they work with other people and they work solo, mm-hmm. right? They're on the desk with highlights and updates during hockey games, stuff like that. But their show is on. Is it on at the same time every night? It's not, is it? That's another thing. They're together on the early evening, not the late night, not the late night, but the 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or whatever time that's on Sports Center. Sometimes they do a couple of reboots because they might come on after the Jays game or a Raptors game or whatever, and then they do a reboot to fill out the hour. I don't know. But they've been together for a long time, right?
Right.
Now, if they were to, at some point, and they're not going to be together forever, if they were to break up, in other words, if they weren't going to be co-anchoring the show, mm-hmm. Jen would do her thing, Dutchie would do his thing, would it be the same?
Well, it's different to me because that's not an established duo brand. To me,
it's not.
I don't think
you don't think so?
We see them. No, I don't think so. Nobody talks about I don't know, Jennifer and Darren, or there's no how you have Jay and Dan,
Dutch
Humble
and Jen are not like Jay and Dan.
No,
20 years together. No,
not branded that. No marketing efforts to brand them as a duo. That's another question for others, but I don't consider them a duo in the same regard. But I will say, Loggins and Messina. Okay, this is the thing. Kenny Loggins had some great solo success in the '80s. So there's another example.
Sonny and Cher.
Yeah, Cher didn't need Sonny there. So.
Right, and those are musical duos. But in the realm of sports media, when you get two people together
Right.
for a long period of time, and I don't care what it is or for what reasons, there's going to be friction. 7-year itch, 10 years together. But I think 10 years is probably a good measuring stick of if you can be successful in a duo for 10 years,
right.
You will have made a name for yourself. There's a brand there with that duo.
Mm-hmm.
If you go out on your own, you may likely be known as, for a long time, half of the duo that did this.
Right.
Right.
So let's find out. It'll be fun to watch what happens with Tim and Sid in this regard. Like, Sid's going off to a different, Rogers universe, if you will,
Right.
a whole different thing. We'll see what happens with Tim without.
Well,
Sid
it's going to be Tim and Cabbie. Well, as we all know, the Tim and Cabbie thing never materialized. Seemed like a good idea at the time, and the show is still known as Tim and Friends, and Cabbie is still a wild card as far as I'm concerned. A very talented fellow. He was my colleague back when I anchored on Headline Sports back in the early 2000s, late 1990s, I guess it was. Tim McAuliffe was there, Sid Sixero was there, Adnan Virk was there, James Sharman, Elliot Friedman, Brian Spear, Greg Sansoni, Steve Koulias, Brian Duff, James Sobolski. Great lineup, some really, really talented people. Most of them young and up and coming, and then there were like old guys like me, and I guess that was about it there. I think Jerry D was there at the time, a fledgling young, teacher who wanted to get into comedy and sports, and we had some really, Stuart Francis had some really talented people there. But I digress. Great directors, Don Landis, Karen Lawns. Headline Sports was a cool place to be in the late 1990s, early 2000s. It was a real training ground for young broadcasters, sportscasters, and a really good place to work too. But of course, the granddaddy of all the sports highlight shows, you know what I'm talking about. Right, Sportsline. Global television began in the fall of 1981. Bob McCown was the solo host, and that show was on every night at 11:30. Every night, Monday to Friday, 11:30. It didn't matter what the programming was. They weren't running hockey games. They weren't running other programming that would run and bleed into the 11 o'clock news. So every night at 11 o'clock was the news. 11:30 was Sportsline. Midnight was Mary Tyler Moore. And 12:30 was this new show, The David Letterman show, Late Night with David Letterman at 12:30. Back in the day. And you know what? Mike and I reminisced about the good old days of sports TV, like in 1985, when competition was stiff. And every television station had their own sportscasts and own sports personalities early in the evening and like at 11 o'clock and 11:30. So here's a clip from March 5th, 2021. All right. So, Mike, on the weekend, I posted an article from 1985, right, in the Toronto Star.
Right.
I had just started at Global Television, and it was by Ken McKee. And I posted this article just to show people that may have remembered or may not have known how competitive the sports casting business, the sports broadcasting business was in 1985 in the city of Toronto. 6 different stations had regular sportscasts.
Wow.
This was before Sportsnet even existed.
Right.
And TSN had just started. So you had CHCH TV, CFTO TV, which is CTV Toronto, TSN, brand new, Global Television Network, CBC, which is CBC Toronto, which was CBLT, the local affiliate, and City TV, which at the time I think was channel 79. No, it was channel 57. They just switched over.
Right.
And so you had 6 different sets of sportscasters, reporters. I'm going to say 30 on-air people in sports from those 6 stations.
Right.
Maybe more. If you include TSN, there's all kinds. But I mean, I'm talking about the scheduled sportscasts,
right,
which every one of them had during their 6 o'clock sports and late sports, 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, whatever time their local news went. There was a sports package as well.
Right.
And there was lots of other stuff. There were other types of shows that were sports related on these stations. Blue Jay specials or Leaf stories or
Blue Jays banter.
Jays Banter, that was CKCO in Kitchener.
Was it? I can't remember where I saw it, but I used to enjoy
Blue Jays Banter was originally CKCO, and then it was syndicated. Yeah,
I got
so
it was on the CFTO,
stations.
right?
All that stuff.
Right.
So I posted the article and got tremendous response from people. Oh, I remember this person.
Sure.
And I wrote down on it that the only person out of those pictures I showed that's still on TV regularly is Vic Rauter. And he was at CBLT at the time.
Right.
angry at the time. And I think Ken Daniels came after him. And there's just so many people that fall into this category that may not have been there at that time. The George Brysons of the world, the Greg Manziuks.
Right.
These were good sportscasters who worked locally. And then after a while, the business kind of dried up. Sportscast got shorter and shorter and shorter. And then eventually everybody said, let's just bow down to TSN and Sportsnet. Let them do all the sportscasting. So there are no regular sportscasts on any of these stations except for one. Do you know which one that is, Mike?
Is there still, does CBC still do something? I feel they haven't. They should.
I don't think so.
Okay.
And they may, and I don't watch.
Then I don't
but
know.
At 11:25 p.m.
Okay. Yeah.
Weeknights.
Yeah.
On Global Television,
mm-hmm.
the station that gave you Sportsline,
right,
and others. Global TV has a sportscast at 11:25. It's hosted by some dude in Calgary. He's new.
Okay.
He's not really very good. I'm sure he's cheap. I'm sure he does other things. But he's in Calgary, and he's anchoring a sportscast on Global in Toronto. Now, this is the same station, Global,
right,
that blew out their sports department. Rob Leth, Megan Robinson, Anthony Bruno, someone else, and I can't remember, and I apologize. But they had a decent sports department up until not too long ago.
Megan Robinson?
Yeah, I mentioned Megan.
Oh, sorry. My apologies.
You're not paying attention? Rob Leth, Megan Robinson, Anthony Bruno, and one other, and I can't think.
Okay.
Blew them all out and told them the reason we're getting rid of our entire sports department, no more sports on Global, because we're going to do hard news. So that's the explanation they got when the sports department was dissolved. Now, I know at least one of them was offered, I think at that time, if you're in the union, you can bump somebody in order to take a job in news. That's the way it works. You've been there a number of years. You can bump somebody in seniority and say, I want that job. I deserve that job. As opposed to, that's it, you're gone. And they didn't even offer them that. They just said, we're blowing up the sports department. And what happens? A few weeks later, some dude from Calgary is reading Global Sports. I thought you guys were getting out of the sports business.
Right.
What the hell?
Yeah, we're used to being deceived here. Was the name Asa Raymond?
That's it.
Okay.
Apologize for that. So you got that going on there. Sports departments are shrinking. Sports departments are shrinking in radio too. We don't know what's going to happen with the Fan 590. We have no idea what Greg Sansoni's going to do. Why didn't they hire Bob McCown back? I mean, apparently, according to McCown, there were talks.
Do re mi.
Got to be, right?
The for sure, the AM radio is being done on the dirt cheap right now, whenever possible.
All right. Meanwhile, over on television, where they pay more than radio, always have, the NHL started their season in January, finished a 56-game schedule in May, and had their Stanley Cup tournament finish up in July, with Tampa winning it all. On Hockey Night in Canada, Kevin Bieksa became a star with his offhanded comments and witty observations, and playing the foil for Ron McLean and Elliot Friedman and Kelly Rudy and Cassie Campbell and others. However, Bieksa may have stepped over the line. We don't know, but he may have stepped over the line after a particular comment directed at play-by-play man Chris Cuthbert. Here we are, June 25th, 2021. Here's the clip. Did you notice somebody missing last night on the Hockey Night in Canada telecast?
I did not, but I know you did.
First of all, I love the outfit Cassie Campbell was wearing last night. She looked like a leather Tuscadero. She had like this gold-colored leather jacket
Penny Tuscadero?
on.
Penny?
Yeah. No, not Pinky. Her sister, Leather.
Oh,
played by
sister.
Susie Quattro.
Oh my God, great reference!
Tuscadero.
What a reference!
Happy Days reference, folks.
Of course.
But anyway, I paid more attention to the clothes because they're on like every night. You know, Elliot's got the hair going, and he's got the nice blue suits. Everyone's going with the blue suits, and on Blue Jay Central too. Jamie and Joe. Everybody's got the blue suits.
They got the blue eyes.
Really they've got that.
The blue eyes pop with the blue suits. Yeah.
But no Kevin Bieksa last night. Didn't you want to hear Kevin Bieksa's comments? I mean, isn't he the best commentator? He wasn't there.
Where was he, Hebsy? Do you know anything? Tell me.
Here's the thing. On the previous broadcast,
okay.
I don't know if you caught this or not, but on Montreal's winning goal, I think it might have been the tying goal, Corey Perry made a beautiful pass, sort of a backhanded pass, And at the time, Chris Cuthbert said, well, Perry was at the end of the shift, was dog tired, end of the shift, and kind of made one of those passes where I can't skate anymore. I'm just going to sort of flip it out front and hope that my teammate's there. So when Cuthbert called the play, he said, look at Corey Perry at the end of the shift. So when they got to the intermission and they throw to Kevin Bieksa, and you never know what Bieksa is going to say, which is half the fun.
Right.
Bieksa says, sorry, Chris Cuthbert, but Corey Perry had just come off the bench. He wasn't at the end of a shift. So he corrected Cuthbert, and I went, wow, that's very perceptive and kind of dangerous too. And wonder how I would feel if I were Cuthbert. Or was I okay in being corrected? I would have in that case, because I was wrong and he was right. He pointed out that Perry had just jumped off the bench. He looked tired at the end of the shift, but he wasn't. But it's sort of like, nobody would ever do that with Bob Cole, would they? Like, would Cherry even say, or McLean ever say, hey, Bob was wrong there? Or would the guys from the Hot Stove, Al Strachan or Eric Tahashik, or those guys, would they ever say, Bob Cole made a mistake there. He said so-and-so was at the end of the shift and he wasn't. Never, ever, ever question what the play-by-play guy said.
Even if the play-by-play guy gets it wrong, you can't deliver the real talk.
No, I'm saying, had you ever heard any commentator ever say that the play-by-play guy, was wrong when he did this? He was incorrect.
I can't remember. Maybe not.
Jamie Campbell or Joe Siddle ever said, Buck blew that one. He was wrong. He said, no, or Dan blew that one. Never.
Right.
Ever.
So wait, let me just unpack this.
Kevin Bieksa goes out, and I'm telling you, he said, sorry, Chris, but Perry had just come off the bench. He wasn't at the end of the shift.
Right.
And he sort of apologized. He did. He sort of said, sorry, Chris, I don't mean to point this out, but my job is to look at certain highlights and point certain things out. And I'm pointing out here that while you may think that Perry was at the end of the shift and was dog tired and made the pass that way, I need to point out that he wasn't at the end of the shift. He had just come off the bench. So that wasn't one of those passes where I'm dog tired, I want to get rid of it.
Are you suggesting, Mr. Hebsher, that they suspended Bieksa for calling out Chris Cuthbert in that manner?
I think it's possible.
Wow.
I think they said, you know what, Kevin, you need a night off.
Wow.
You need a night off. You're going to be part of the Stanley Cup final anyway, or you would have been part of Game 7 if the game was the Habs lost and it went to Vegas. But maybe you should take a night off.
I hope that's not true.
And maybe Cuthbert said, or maybe someone said something. He said, hey, you can't have Kevin Bieksa, correcting the play-by-play guy, Chris Cuthbert. Can't do that.
Now, just for the record, though, this is
I'm only throwing
speculative.
It out there.
Okay, so we don't have any confirmation on this story. Okay, because that's bullshit.
When was the last time Don Cherry or any of those guys wasn't there for Hockey Night in Canada? Took the night off in the middle of the Stanley Cup semifinals. It's never happened. Yeah, that was bizarre, huh? But a few months later, some really weird stuff began to happen at Hockey Night in Canada. Jim Hewson, the #1 play-by-play man at Rogers, Hall of Fame inductee, recent Hall of Fame inductee, announced his retirement, or so it seemed, because this took place within days of Rogers announcing that Leo Rautins would no longer be part of Sportsnet's Raptors broadcasts, and also that Mike Zigomanis, the co-host of the morning show on Rogers-owned Fan 590 in Toronto, were out of a job as well. So naturally, speculation was running wild at Rogers. Wow, TSN the month before, three big names at Rogers being moved around. So a lot of talk about sports media back then. And this conversation from September 24th, 2021. Not 2001, like it says on the graphic, on the font. Trust me, we made a mistake there. I'm rectifying it right now. This is from September 24th, 2021. And I'm sure that when they tapped Jim Hewson on the shoulder or tapped Leo on the shoulder, tapped Ziggy on the shoulder, it was like, how much money can we save, if these people are gone and in the package? It's just all about numbers now.
Well,
George Springer makes $150 million. If I didn't know he made $150 million, if no one knew what his salary was, would it make a difference? Sure. But once you know that this guy's making that much, and once you know that person's position, and some bean counter goes, if we can convince Hewson to retire, if we can get rid of Zigomanis, and if we can find a way, I don't know how we're going to do it, but if we get Leo Rautins to admit that he's just too white, and in this current culture of basketball, certainly, we can't have all white guys on our broadcast crew. where there's diversity. We need to have people of color. We need to have persons with disabilities. We need to have females. We have to have everyone represented. And we're looking at our basketball coverage and going, And I don't have to tell you who's white and who's black. You know that. But optics are everything in television. Everything. Don't forget that. Ever.
Are we getting into this right now? Or are we going to do Jays first?
Just a second, all right?
Only because I got questions.
Well, go ahead. Ask your questions.
Does this bother you? Let's say they did intentionally, because it's possible Sportsnet wanted to diversify their NBA coverage, right? The players, the audience, they're diverse. Why shouldn't the broadcasters be diverse? So if it's possible.
Are you telling me that Alvin Williams is anywhere near as good a Raptors broadcaster as Leo Rautins? Now, just remember, Alvin Williams is a member of the organization, whether you want to believe it or not, whether he's currently employed by the Raptors. This is a guy who was a player, assistant coach, director of player development. So he's a Raptor. So what happens is, when the time comes, if the team needs to be criticized, you're not going to get Alvin Williams doing any criticism. But Leo Rautins, of course, because Leo Rautins is an analyst and Leo Rautins doesn't care, right? He's not under the thumb of the Toronto Raptor organization when it comes to being critical.
But Rogers already owns a good chunk of this basketball team. Like Rogers, they're already in bed together. Like it's already, forget the fact they're partners on the broadcast side. They literally, I think it's 37.5% of that team is owned by Rogers.
All right. So
if you're going down that road,
Leo
there's already
okay,
go ahead. Sorry,
Leo, it's been a great 25 years. And we know that people grew up with you, but the culture's changed. And you're a 61-year-old white guy. Now, if we didn't know about color and didn't care, we would say, just give me the best guy. Give me the guy who's best, the guy who knows. But is it important today to the executives at Rogers that their broadcasters are of a certain vintage? Like, is it important that Leo was there from day one and can reference Damon Stoudemire and Oliver Miller and stuff like that? Or is it more important that whoever's sitting next to Matt Devlin is more urban, more culturally in tune with today's basketball fan?
Diversity is not a bad thing, Hebsy. And I think that you to judge, okay, so 20-something
give me the best
years,
guy or girl. But hey, by the way, the NBA has 2 female play-by-play callers this year on radio. Full-time play-by-play caller, females. 2 of them. They just hired Kate Scott, the Philadelphia 76ers. And I can't think of the other woman's name, and I apologize, from the Milwaukee Bucks. Right? Now, they're good. They're good. They know basketball. They know the league. They know the NBA. They're young. They're hip. Right? They can probably do, I don't know, but they can probably give you crossover stuff from WNBA, from women's college basketball, as well as men's college basketball. And so they've got the background for it. And maybe they've got the pattern that today's audience wants to hear. That's the way it is. You don't like it? Too bad, right? You're saying you're being racist, Hebsy, or you're reading too much into it. Maybe I am.
I would just like to point out that how good was Leo Rautins those first couple of years? Like he had a couple of decades to hone his skill and get better. And it's highly possible that Alvin Williams is going to put in his reps and get better and maybe be an even better analyst than Leo Rautins at the end of the day. Like you can't, you know what I mean? He's had that spot for 2+ decades. It's okay to freshen it up and give someone else a chance to improve.
I didn't say it wasn't.
Okay.
But is Alvin Williams going to be learning on the job? Because I saw Alvin Williams enough times doing his little inserts with the panel, which is the easiest thing in the world. You ask a guy a question, he's got knowledge, he gives you the answer. So I played a different story. And obviously pairing with Matt Devlin, who from everyone I've spoken to is the easiest guy to work with. Right. He'll make you look great. He makes Jack Armstrong look great. He makes Leo look great. And whoever he works with when he's done baseball games, he's just a superb, smooth play-by-play guy who allows the analyst, the color man or color woman to do their job, right? Like a traffic cop too, but he calls the play. But they get engaged. They get into conversations. He'll ask Jack or Leo during the course of play what they think, poke the bear a little bit, right?
Right.
So will Alvin Williams and Matt Devlin make a great team? That takes time. You don't just drop 2 people together. And are fans willing to, go through that? Well, I guess they don't have any choice. And you had a choice, and we're glad that you chose us to check us out here on episode 276 of Hebsy On Sports. That's it for the show. Thanks, as always, to Toronto Mike for production and inspiration. Hit him up at Toronto Mike and listen to his outstanding podcast. And also thanks to our executive producer, Scott Allen, and to our sponsors, NateMakesSoap.com and GoodfootDelivery.com. Use the promo code Hebsy20, that's Hebsy20 with Nate, and Hebsy50, Hebsy50 with Goodfoot for big savings. And thanks to you for allowing us into your headspace. We're back with another episode next week. We're going to be live with our guests, Toronto Raptors radio play-by-play man Eric Smith and comedian and NBA pundit Dean Hebsher. Hope to see you then. Until then, so long for now.